Here we are. We are live on the Blue Star Lunch Hour. I'm Joey Eitz. That guy's John Owning. Nailed it. And it's training camp. There's practices. There's football activities. They put the pads on today for the first time all year, which is awesome. And we got a lot to talk about already. Last week we went through the press conference and all that kind of stuff. I'm glad to be past all of that. I'm glad to be talking about football. There will be contract stuff that we'll still talk about over the course of the next couple of weeks. But John, football.
Woo! Finally, what we've been waiting for. We've been talking about, been re-lamenting and re-going over all the happenings of last year, all the contract stuff, all the, inability to make moves during the offseason, the draft, free agency. Was Mike McCarthy going to be here or not? Mike Zimmer getting hired. It's finally exciting to talk about stuff that is actually happening on the football field. Thank gosh.
Absolutely. So, the title for this video, we got to play the game a little bit here with the YouTube stuff, right?
Yeah.
Are the Cowboys ruining Micah Parsons? And so the reason for this question, kind of as the lead into the show, is it feels like there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of back and forth about what Micah Parsons' role is going to look like for the Cowboys. And we've talked about this a little bit, and it seems to have come to fruition that he's spending a pretty decent amount more time with the off-the-ball linebacker group than he has in the last year or so, and not as much time, with the on-the-ball defensive line types. And it just feels like they're trying to find it. He's a phenomenal pass rusher. I don't think there's any question about that. Phenomenal. And as you pointed out, yeah. And as you pointed out and described as well as just about anybody, he's kind of just done that on kind of a wing and a prayer, like just on pure freak athleticism, right? Like just being a better athlete than the guys he's going against. And so you look at that and you're like, man, another year or two of development and, a new defensive scheme that maybe, gives him some different opportunities, all that kind of stuff. And you wonder, do we wind up? And then he comes in and talks about he's lost some weight. He's down from 250 or so that he started camp last year down to about 240, which means by the end of the year he's probably going to be he's going to be 220 or something like that by the end of the year. So like, it feels like in an effort to find a role for him on rundowns, they're going to take away they're going to downplay a little bit what he's done best in the pass game. And that it's going to just kind of mute a little bit what he is as a player. And so that's the reason for the headline and the question is, are the Cowboys, are they trying to fix a weakness in his game, which is not a great run player on the line of scrimmage, but he's also not a great run player off the ball either. So what's your take on what's going on with Micah? Am I overplaying this too much in terms of what it's going to look like and all that? Or is it just me being dramatic, or is there something to be concerned about here?
Well, you're dramatic, Joey, but I don't think that's the problem here. No,
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. It's multifaceted, really. There's the one thing I want to talk about first to get out of the way is there's been a lot of people talking about like the Micah edge truthers are in their feelings. They're losing their mind seeing Micah, line up playing off-ball linebacker, blah, 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 getting moved around. And I think, at least for both of us, our stance has never been that you have to play Micah at edge 100%. It's that you have to play Micah on the line of scrimmage. Yeah. And that line of scrimmage is very long.
Micah needs to be moving forward. He needs to be moving forward. Mm-hmm. And as long as he's moving forward, I don't care where he starts. but he's got
Exactly.
to be moving forward. And that's been the case since he was at Penn State, that's the best way to use him. It's just point him in a direction and say go, and let him be the freakiest guy on the field. And
I mean,
I got to
that's
point
why.
out, man, the fan rag shirt is an amazing pull, by the way. That's glorious.
Or think, shouts out Jamie Eisner, all the homies back then.
Oh, yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
it's funny, the Micah Parsons, that's why, playing forward, that's why his best off-ball linebacker game of his life was in that, I don't know what bowl game it was that Penn State
It was the Cotton Bowl, I think, because it was in Dallas.
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember. But
Yeah.
Memphis was a very heavy run team, and Micah was playing forward the entire game, and he was a monster,
Yes.
I tell you. And that is kind of the key to his skill set, is like you said, playing forward and playing. I've always wanted to on X just take a little screenshot of the Cowboys defense and then create a little box. It's like, this is the Micah Parsons line up box. If he's lining up anywhere outside of this tiny little box, it's like 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage and forward, or I guess in front of the line of scrimmage, since it's the defense's point of view.
2 yards away from the ball.
Yeah, 2 yards away from the ball or more, then you're good. I don't care. Like, the thing is, from what everybody tells me that he's been lining, it's not like he's playing a classic Mike or Will linebacker. He's playing mostly that Sam linebacker that's going to line, kind of on the edge of the offense. And guess what? They're really close to the line of scrimmage, like 1 or 2 yards away. And you want to call that off-ball linebacker, go ahead. But he's doing largely the same thing. He's just 1 or 2 yards further back than he would normally be. But when you combine that with the angle that he's going to have, because he's going to be wider, it's going to make him more difficult to block. I mean, imagine trying to block Micah Parsons from a wide 9 consistently. That's not fun. But I think the thing that excites me about what Zimmer's doing with Micah Parsons is that he's going to be hunting, or at least this is what he said, he's going to be hunting one-on-one matchups the entire game. And I think that is probably the most advantageous thing you could do for Micah Parsons, because like I've said in the past, I think Dan Quinn did a lot of phenomenal things as a defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. I think all the success that you saw him have and saw Micah Parsons have, I mean, just to have the creativity to move Micah to the edge in the first place was really smart. That's something that I'm not sure someone like Mike Zimmer would have done. He seems a little bit more rigid and his position. So if he thought Michael was, an off-ball linebacker coming out, probably would have kept him there and try to do a bunch of different other things to make up for that injury that I think was it DeMarcus Lawrence had.
Yes, his foot.
Micah Parsons' rookie year. But the thing that I think Dan Quinn kind of settled on a little bit too much with Micah is that he would kind of get resigned to the fact that Micah was going to get slides his way, get double, triple teamed. And he'd kind of try to use that to create other advantageous opportunities for other people on the defense, whether it was blitzing linebackers, blitzing the big safety, or using stunts and twists to get, Osa free, or to get DeMarcus Lawrence free, those type of things. And I think Mike Zimmer, at least from, we're all reading between the lines here, trying to see between the tea leaves of what they're saying and what they're doing on the practice. But it seems like he's going to be making a more concerted effort of moving Micah around the line of scrimmage to create those one-on-one matchups. Because if you're playing off-ball linebacker, the defense isn't looking to create one-on-one matchups for you unless you're in that mugged up up linebacker role, which again, that's on the line of scrimmage. We love that for Micah. That is something that is
absolutely
very exciting. So I
give
think
me Micah Parsons lined up over a center on 3rd and 8 all day long. Like, I will take that all day.
Exactly. So I think people are getting a little bit, ahead of themselves talking about Micah playing linebacker, because he's not playing the classic linebacker spot. Or for us, Mike Zimmer wouldn't be talking about how he's hunting for one-on-one matchups the entire game for Micah. So yeah. I think it's just some people are getting a little bit too worried either way. The linebacker, Micah Crowder, is getting a little bit too excited about what they take from him playing, a classic linebacker position, so to speak. And I think some of the Micah, play him along the line of scrimmage folks are getting a little bit too worried about, oh my God, he's going to play off. He's not going to get the same opportunity. I think if you look at his pass rush snaps last year to this year, I think you may only see like maybe 10 to 15 to 20 total snaps different. And I think that's fine if you want to do it like the Mike McDonald way, where you just sometimes you're going to drop them in the coverage because that's not what they're expecting, and you're going to use that to create a blitz the other way or what have you. You know, they were talking about Mike McDonald. He was having Jonathan Hankins drop in the coverage during practice, you know, and that's not something that we all believe is something that you should do on a consistent basis. But for those type of defenses that thrive on, you know, creating indecision, creating confusion on the offense, you have to do those type of things from time to time. And I think you'll see that from Mike Zimmer. In some games, you might see Micah Parsons drop back maybe 2 or 3 times in the coverage as kind of a constraint. And then other games, you're going to see him never do it. He's just going to be rushing upfield, playing the run upfield, you know, doing what we've classically seen him do with Dan Quinn, except just getting moved around the defense a little bit more consistently.
Yeah, I think that excuse me. I think that the part about it that's interesting to me is there's all this talk about they're going to play way more 3 linebacker, way more base defense, right? So when teams roll, because in the past, teams would roll in, put heavy personnel on the field because they wanted to run the ball on the Cowboys. The Cowboys would stay in their kind of big dime, 3 nickel, 3 corner defense, or 3 safety, 3 corner defense, and teams would be able to run the ball on them. And Mike Zimmer is, you know, old school enough that he's going to say, you know, that's not going to happen against us. You know, it's not going to happen because of the personnel that's on the field. We may get beat because maybe our guys aren't good enough, but we're not going to get beat because of a line. The Arizona game last year is like the perfect example of, like, you know, Micah Parsons in a down 3-point stance lined up over the center on like 1st and 10. Like, we're not going to get in these crazy alignments on 1st and 2nd down that are going to get us beat before they even snap the ball.
And for those that talk about Micah Parsons being, you know, not as good against the run from a line of scrimmage thing, if you're playing at Sam, that is insulating him and protecting him from having to take on offensive tackles and offensive guard combination blocks, those type of things. He's going to be taking on tight ends, so that is already a more advantageous matchup for him.
That was the point. I was rolling my way to that kind of direction. Was that, you know, we're going to put bigger bodies on the field, which means that if Micah is playing Sam, if he's playing Sam in a traditional under front, you know, we've talked about over under fronts here and all that kind of stuff. He's essentially on the line of scrimmage. And he's the end man on the line of scrimmage with a defensive end and a defensive tackle inside of him, which means that if it's a duo play, if it's a zone play, even if it's a zone play to the front side, it's very hard to get a combo block to that Sam linebacker on the front side of a zone play. On the back, if he's on the backside, now he's just like a free screamer at the quarterback against bootlegs and all that kind of stuff. So I think that if he is truly a Sam linebacker who they brought some weight down, they're going to put him at Sam on some 1st and 2nd downs just to get him blocked by 240-pound tight ends instead of 305-pound tackles or 320-pound tackles 20 times a game on 1st and 2nd downs. Great. I think that's an awesome way to maximize who he is. Because it allowed the one thing that you will run into is that in some of and we talked about this all the way back to DeMarcus Ware in the 3-4, right? Is that if teams wanted to, they could line up in such a way and run motions in such a way that would force Micah out of the pass rush plan by alignment, that he would then have to become a coverage player by the way they aligned and the way they moved guys around, by having multiple tight ends on that side, multiple guys out on that side, all that kind of stuff.
The McVays and the Shanahans and the McDaniels would do repeatedly.
Absolutely. And so that is really my concern, is that some of those 1st and 2nd down snaps that he would be a demon on in pass rush, because maybe the offensive tackle's in a 3-point stance because he's trying to show run pass. And Micah's just such a freak athlete that he gets off the ball and he beats him around the corner. Now some of those situations, especially like if there's a tight end on that side and Micah's wide in a 9 and the tackle's got his hand in the dirt because he's trying to show run pass flexibility, and Micah's got such an angle in that with the athleticism, the guy's got no shot. That kind of stuff is going to go away. in that kind of role, unless it's a designed scheme like, hey, you're going no matter what, unless it's a 5-man service rush or they're dropping the opposite defensive end, or there's all kinds of things they can do. But I'm just a little, I have been, and as we kind of talk about it, I get a little more comfortable with the idea. I'm just a little bit concerned that when you have a guy who's really, really, really extremely like outlier good at one aspect of the game, and the rest of the game is a little bit, I don't want to say lacking, but just he's not as outstanding in the other areas of the game. I worry a little bit when you start trying to maximize their role to improve their impact in that other area, and how that might affect that thing that they're great at that made them one of the best players in the NFL at that thing. And so that's kind of where the concern comes for Micah, for me, in that area. Another, pivoting off of Micah, staying on the line of scrimmage, defensive end, pass rush situation. Unfortunately, Sam Williams, a guy that a lot of people were excited about this year coming into year 3, tears his ACL, and we were. I know you were. Like he's a guy who had a lot of the traits that you would look for to really succeed at a high level in a Mike Zimmer defense on the edge. And he's out for the year. Torn ACL. I think Patrick Walker reported ACL and MCL. So he's going to, do the surgery, the rehab, all that kind of stuff. That's a tough journey for a young player, and one who I'm sure was expecting.
You would know more, but the fact that the MCL was included in it makes it a little bit more of a worrisome recovery, right, than if it was just a clean ACL.
Yeah, I think typically they say that if it's just the clean ACL, there's a lot more stability in the knee left. If it's just the ACL, I mean, obviously not as much as there would be if it was all together. But if it's just the ACL, it's a little more stable. Once you start adding those other ligaments, there becomes a lot more risk in there because the surgery is more complicated, the recovery, because now you're recovering more than one ligament in the knee. So it just gets more complicated. But just mentally, the process of, he spent the last 6 months building up for this football season. And now all of a sudden, like 2 days in or something like that, before they even put the pads on, before they even played a game, that season is over. And now it's a complete reset to a completely different mental battle to stay locked in, to stay focused and all that kind of stuff. And, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that, like, he's a guy who came from Ole Miss with a reputation for, not necessarily staying super focused and being on top of things and stuff like that. This is going to be a really tough thing for Sam Williams, that if he can get through it and if he can push through and persevere through this, he has a chance to have a great career on the other side of it. But unfortunately, this is the kind of thing that for some players can like completely derail a career and really cause a lot of problems. And I really just hope that that's not the case for Sam.
Yeah, one of the worrisome parts for me is last year they talked so much about how John Stevens Jr., DeMarvion Overshone, and David Durden became such great friends because they were all in the rehab process from season-ending injuries at the same time. So they can kind of be each other's accountability. They would motivate each other to improve. They would, be able to check and see on each other, like, where's his progress at? Is my progress lagging? Blah, blah, blah. All these type of things. And it just made it a much more, I would say, productive rehab process because they had all three together. Sam Williams doesn't have anybody going with him yet, And
and knock on wood, he doesn't have somebody else in the next couple of weeks that joins him, right?
And let's say the Cowboys have a pretty healthy, training camp going through the preseason, and there's, no other 53-man roster really type of guy who gets a season-ending type of injury. That's just going to make the rehab process even lonelier. It's going to make it more difficult to stay motivated. All these type of little things, he's going to have to be his own accountability in those situations. And with anybody, even somebody with great work ethic, that's extremely difficult in a rehab process because it's such a lonely and difficult process. And especially for Sam, he's already talked about how he doesn't know many people out here, how, he kind of is looking for people to like spend his off time with and do stuff with, I just feel really bad for him. And I am worried about how this whole process is going to go for him. I hope to best that he comes back stronger. He doesn't lose that, that noted athleticism that made him such a player with high potential before. Hopefully that doesn't leave. But as we've seen we talk about it all the time, but Jabril Cox, totally different guy pre and post ACL.
Mhm.
Is Sam
Yep.
Williams going to be like that? Who knows? I hope not, but you definitely can't rule it out, especially with the Cowboys' history of ACL recoveries lately.
Yeah, to spin a little bit of positive, he's got 14 months between now and when the season rolls around for 2025. So he has one of the things that a guy, like Trevon Diggs, who got hurt, I think, in week 4 of last year, he's got an extra 3 months on what Trevon Diggs had whenever he hurt his to be ready to come back. So, hopefully, they've got to deal with swelling and all that kind of stuff and get the surgery scheduled. Hopefully they'll get all that done and get it behind him so that he can start the rehab process. And then he'll be able to be well down the road and be able to have the season to look forward to, once the offseason rolls around, he'll be able to hopefully be able to be pretty involved in that offseason process. And then it will really just kind of be
he'd be ready to go full bore, right? You'll probably have a slow
Yeah,
start.
exactly. I mean, it's essentially 12 months. Like, I think most of the guys who you talked about, that group of 3, those guys all started camp. They all, none of those guys went on PUP. They participated some in the offseason program. Like, that's kind of what we're looking at. And this is even a couple of weeks ahead of that. So hopefully, like I said, for Sam's sake, the surgery goes well. He's able to get into recovery, develop, we know Dak Prescott and Britt Brown have a very close relationship because of that recovery process. Maybe that happens for Sam and Britt, who's the best in the business at what he does. We'll be able to work him through it and not, hopefully there's not another player that he has to go through it with, but hopefully Britt can be that guy for him.
We got some breaking news injury-wise. I do want to get back on the Sam Williams, especially who might replace him, but we got some breaking news. Trevon Diggs is coming off PUP.
Coming off PUP.
Awesome.
Yeah, huge deal for the first. Is he coming off today to practice today?
He is eligible to practice, but will continue to be brought along slowly, per Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News.
Gotcha. There we go. Well, that's good news. As we talked about Trevon being a few weeks behind, here we are a week into camp, and he's going to work his way in, which is awesome to hear. But yeah, Sam's going to have to go.
And everybody's been talking about how well the cornerbacks have been playing. I mean, the plays, guys like Deron Bland has been making, Josh Butler has been making, Kalen Carson has been making. Then you add another guy like Trevon Diggs into the bunch. It's going to be exciting for me when I get there on Friday, baby. Those wide receiver
Absolutely
101s. But yes, sorry.
Absolutely.
To Sam Williams.
No, you're good. You're good. It kind of goes back to this conversation we were just having, right? Is that this process can be lonely, it can be hard, but there is something for him to. And again, this is year 3 for Sam. Luckily, it's not year 4 where he's going to miss the whole year right before a free agency season. Like, he's got a chance to recover, come back, have the best year of his career in year 4. And then roll forward. The next storyline, we've the Mike Zimmer defense appears, to be playing pretty darn well. They, from what you see and hear, like, it seems like the defense is a decent amount ahead of the offense. Which, with a grain of salt, that the second most important and maybe the best player on the offense, CeeDee Lamb, is not there. The defense has been, right on top of things, exactly where you would hope that they would be, and probably ahead of where you would expect them to be in the first year of what is, we wondered how significant of a scheme change it would be. Based on what we're hearing, it's a pretty significant overhaul that they're going through on the defensive side of the ball. And so that's pretty exciting news to hear that the defense is, making plays, getting turnovers, all that kind of stuff. Now, on the Dak Prescott side of things, are we concerned about camp interceptions? No. Personally, I want Dak to try to find and dial every year, what can I get away with? Especially because he says, I feel better than I've ever felt. I feel lighter. I feel faster. I'm throwing the ball better than I ever have. I want him to dial in that risk-taking level, because you need your quarterback to be willing to push it right to the edge but you don't want him to push it over. And so I'm excited to hear that the defense is making plays. They're taking advantage of the opportunities that are there. And it sounds like it's happening up and down the depth chart in terms of where it's happening with the defense.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see how it plays itself out all together. I'm really excited for these preseason games to see kind of like what their base shell is going to look like. What are they going to major out of? What are the techniques going to be of the defensive line? Where the linebacker depth is going to be? Are the cornerbacks going to be playing off? Are they going to be playing up and press? Those type of things. It's going to be exciting either way. I'm just kind of trying to hold back like my thought, because the things that you hear from the beat reporters on and stuff from like a scheme perspective, I'm not sure how much I don't want to be like mean or disrespectful, act like I know so much more than everybody else, but I'm not sure how
it's
much
okay, John. You can say that. You can say that. It's okay.
Not how much they really have like studied the intricacies of what a Zimmer defense is and like what the scheme, like what is a difference between like a country cover 2 and then a Tampa cover 2, or quarters and all those type of like you don't have to know like all the like the stubby versus the match and all these different like things, but just the overall outline. I just think most of them look like, oh, there's 2 safeties back there. Okay, they're playing split.
Yeah, they're playing a lot of cover 2. Yeah.
And then if there's one, they're like, it's cover 1 or cover 3. And I'm like, yeah, I suppose. And I still haven't heard anybody talk about, what kind of fronts they're using. Are they using over fronts, under fronts? Are they, where's the one technique? Is he playing head up? Is he playing 2-eye? Is he shaded? Those type of things. But those are all the type of things that'll work itself out in time. Oh, sorry, in time.
John, we have a comment in the chat that I'm going to bring up, and it's going to bring you lots of joy, I think, to be able to talk about this question.
Oh yes,
because this is very on brand for John, the John owning brand. Justin asked, rumors of Carl Lawson being targeted to replace Sam Williams. Thoughts on the move if it's done? I know there was a group of Cowboys Twitter that was high on Lawson through the draft process. But you can change that group of Cowboys Twitter and just insert @John owning right there, and you pretty much have it nailed. I don't know that there's anybody in Cowboys Twitter or football Twitter for that matter who thinks higher of Carl Lawson as a player than John does. So John, I know you would be ecstatic if the Cowboys decided to target Lawson to replace Williams. Any more thoughts and details beyond that? I had to pull that up for the for the brand.
My first thought is dreams do come true.
There you go. Absolutely.
This is something that I've been advocating for since Carl Lawson came out of Auburn. He was the type of guy who was a first round. He had first round tape all the way, but was one of those guys that fell because of injury concerns. He had a hip issue. I think he had a torn ACL as well in college, and those caused him to fall all the way to the 4th round. And with the Bengals, you saw that he was one of the best value pass rushers in the entire NFL for his tenure there. And reminder that his tenure there, while he missed Mike Zimmer, he did play under Paul Guenther. So there is a big connection there with the Cowboys defense currently.
Yeah. And personality, personal relationships, and like scheme fit, understanding and all that kind of stuff within the role that he would be asked to play for the Cowboys. Sure.
And if you want to talk about, that's the exact role that Sam Williams is leaving. We heard Mike Zimmer say that he was going to play 70 to 80 snaps. He was probably going to be that weak side defensive end. And that's exactly what Carl Lawson does. I think Carl Lawson kind of going through his career, obviously he was really good at the Cincinnati Bengals. Then he left for Cincinnati, got paid with the New York Jets. And unfortunately, I think he tore his Achilles there.
Yeah, like it was like a Sam Williams type thing. It was like a first couple of days of practice. Like he gets paid big money to go to the Jets and then blows his leg out. Yeah.
But what people don't remember before that injury is he was beating the brakes off of Mekhi Becton to the point that even Duke Manyweather, who was Mekhi Becton's biggest fan and his coach at that time, he even said that Carl Lawson is just a different dude off the edge and that you shouldn't. It was kind of like the Tyron Smith DeMarcus Ware type thing.
Yeah.
Like DeMarcus Ware was just beating the brakes off him, and that's what Carl Lawson was doing. They're like, guys, relax. This guy's really good. Don't take that to mean that's what he's going to be. But then he tore his Achilles. And last year, what happened is he was just coming off that rehab. He was just stuck behind one of the deepest edge defender groups in the entire NFL. They were expecting him to be kind of part of their 1-2 punch on the edge, but unfortunately, Bryce Huff developed into the most efficient pass rusher in the entire NFL last year, and that's why he got paid by the Eagles. And I'm kind of worried about him playing with the Eagles because I think he's one of the highest upside rushers in the NFL, and someone, when you give him more snaps, he could be fantastic. But so that's kind of why Carl Lawson was left out and didn't play much last year. But when he's right, when he is healthy, he is not only one of the smarter rushers in the NFL with a developed bag of tricks, but he has some of the best tactics. He understands how to streamline his moves together, how to set up offensive tackles. Kind of his pass rush makeup is that he's extremely quick off the line. He's a very compact, condensed pass rusher. He's like 6'4", 260, but he has like 31-inch little T-Rex arms.
Yeah, another reason he fell, other than the injuries. Yep.
But despite the fact that he's so short, he's one of the reasons why I say arm length is so overrated, because he uses the long arm, and he'll still outreach guys with 34, 35-inch arms, because when you knife your body and do that one arm is longer than two, you can still out-touch offensive tackles. Absolutely. And that's what he does consistently. He rushes with that long arm, and he uses that to kind of be his antenna to feel where the offensive tackle is in their set. If they're light in their set, he's going to power through, and he's going to shot put them by, and then he'll run and flatten to the quarterback. If they're pushing too wide, then he'll use it to keep them pushing wide. He'll rip underneath, and that's how he wins inside. And if he feels like they're light in their set, like they're not sitting down, then he's just going to push their butt all the way back to the quarterback and get pressure that way. He's a power-based rusher, especially at this point of his career, with an athletic, I would say, start and a powerful finish. And I think that is something that when you have Micah Parsons rushing from the other side, he's using speed, he's going to be going high side or low side probably 99.9% of the time. Then you have the power guy on the other side. And you always hear people like Cameron Jordan, people like Von Miller talk about how important it is to have complementary pass rush. When you have your speed guy on one side, you want to have a powerful guy on the other side.
Pocket pusher on the other, yep.
Exactly. And that would be the perfect combination of having a Micah and a Carl. And then potentially, and you're also going to have DeMarcus Lawrence rushing in there. You're going to have Osa Odigizua rushing in there. And these are the type of guys that if they get one-on-one matchups consistently, they're going to be productive as well. So on the snaps where Micah is, the offense does figure him out. They do know they get that double team. They get that slide protection his way. These are the kind of guys that can eat. And I would even say that I think at this point in their careers, I am more trustworthy as long as he's healthy, as long as he's back to healthy, because we don't know. Obviously, a workout would tell us that. And the Cowboys would obviously, if they're going to bring him in, they would work him out. But if he's healthy and good to go, I trust Carl Lawson to win his one-on-one matchups much more consistently than I trust a Sam Williams, who's a little bit more inconsistent at this point, where you see really high highs. Like, oh my gosh, if he could just replicate these type of rushes each time, he'd be a double-digit sack type of year of a guy. But then he'll have 50% of his rushes where he's just, running down the middle of a guy, not really using his hands, kind of peeking over blocks. Where's the quarterback type thing? And when you're rushing the passer, the second you start peeking, it's over. So I would really love to have Carl Lawson on this team. I think he fits the team really perfectly. He's exciting. Another guy I've heard some rumors about is Yannick Ngakoue, who is a little bit of a different guy. He's kind of a lot more similar to DeMarcus Lawrence in the sense that he's a cross-chop fiend. He's always cross-chopping. He's going to keep cross-chopping. He doesn't really have any other moves besides a cross-chop. But when he lands, it's a beautiful sight to see. And he's someone who can still get you, 5 to 7 sacks a year as well, even though I don't think he's going to be someone who can be as high of a pressure per snap type of pass rusher.
Yeah. So here's the people's question.
Woo.
Bigger John owning brand player, DeMarcus Lawrence or Carl Lawson?
I mean, early on, it was definitely Carl Lawson. But ever since I had to take out my Jon Snow sword and start fighting off all these Ramsey Boltons, the D-Law haters. I've taken up, DeMarcus Lawrence is definitely my favorite Cowboy of the modern era. Going back before that, or of the recent era, going back before that, it's always been between DeMarcus Ware or Larry Allen. I would say, even though he's not quite to the caliber of those two players, just for my love of a player, of everything from off field, on field, personality, all of that. I just don't see how there's any way you can not like DeMarcus Lawrence.
Yeah, about the only complaint you can have about DeMarcus Lawrence is that he had 2 really high production sack years, got paid off of those high production sack years, and has continued to be phenomenal in the role that he's played, but just hasn't matched that like 12, 13 sack season like he had, right before he got paid, which for a lot of people, it's like watching training camp, right? Oh, there's 2 safeties back there. They're playing cover 2.
Yeah.
Oh, he got paid $20 million and he only had 8 sacks. Like what, why he sucks. Like, it's not true, but people don't understand what they're looking at a lot of times, and it can cause some problems. But yeah, I think
been the best run defending defensive end in the entire NFL since he came in. I mean, if you take that stint, what has he been? Almost a decade now.
Yeah,
there's been
2014. He was the 2014 draft. Yeah,
there's been no defensive end who can replicate his consistent lead, his high level play against the run. I mean, think about it last year. All the dominance that he had near the goal line in high leverage situations. He's also an extremely clutch player. Think about it as a rookie, the Lions game, the sack to take the game to overtime, the sack in overtime to finish the game off.
Yep.
Those type of things. DeMarcus Lawrence, when, they always talk about, that was the thing with DeMarcus Ware. They used to say he was so good. He'd get a sack, 2 sacks in the first 3 quarters, but in the fourth quarter or in these high leverage spots, outside of the Saints game or whatever, you wouldn't really see him. You cannot say that about DeMarcus Lawrence. So many of his best plays throughout his career have come in high leverage situations, near the goal line, end of the game, third, fourth quarter. He is the type of guy that's going to make a play. And how can you not love that? He's just a phenomenal guy, phenomenal player. And I feel extremely lucky that I've been able to study him. Really hone in and study the nuances of his skill set has just opened my eyes so much to edge play in general. It's fantastic. He's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, you and I have had the opportunity to, because of the time period that we've kind of been doing this thing, not this show particularly, but this thing that we do, whatever you want to call it, right? It is lined up really well with, the end of the Tony Romo era into the Dak Prescott era. And then like the 2014 draft with Zach Martin and DeMarcus Lawrence, like that time period, their career has lined up really well with us doing this thing, right? And so because of that, like players like that, I know you do too. There's a special affinity for those guys, for me, and just an appreciation for their game because I've watched them so closely. I watched them in college, and I've seen them go from really good college players to really good pros to, Zach Martin's going to be a Hall of Famer, 5 years after he retires from the league. And so like, there's definitely an affinity for that. And I think as a third party, I would say DeMarcus Lawrence is definitely the John Owning brand player of the year. But Carl Lawson is a close second. And I think before Tank got paid, and there turned into being a lot of haters for DeMarcus Lawrence, which, again, you will notice this every time a Cowboys player gets paid, fans and the team, fans and the Joneses specifically, expect that person to change who they are as a player because they got paid. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
But what winds up happening is people say, oh, he got paid $20 million a year. He needs to get 13, 15 sacks a season, even if that hasn't been who he was throughout his career leading up to that. Or Michael Gallup's going to all of a sudden become a hyper efficient, like really high quality target hog on the outside because he got paid. That's not how it works. The injuries hurt him a lot too in that aspect, but there's an affinity for those guys. And once those guys start to come out and that appreciation kind of goes away for who they are, once those guys start making a lot of money, it's easy to get attached to them as guys that we really kind of take up for and take for sure. there's been some quarterback contracts over the last few days. Jordan Love gets signed to a big, huge contract. One of the, it's hard to they all lined up. And this is why, I talk all the time about, exactly where these markets are going to be. The fact that Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence both signed their contracts in the last month. Tua Tagovailoa signed a contract very recently too, and Jared Goff signed his. So just this offseason, we have had what is now the second, third, fourth, and fifth highest paid contracts ever given to quarterbacks in terms of annual value, average annual value. Now, a couple of those guys are 4-year contracts, so they are a little less total value than the 5-year contracts. But all this is leading up to, is Dak Prescott going to get a new contract this year? Is CeeDee Lamb going to get a contract in time to show up and come to camp and all that kind of stuff? It's just interesting to see. And even, the Packers have this reputation as a super conservative salary cap management team. They just gave Jordan Love a $220 million contract off of essentially 8 games of quality quarterback play. They made him the 3rd highest paid quarterback ever, which makes him the 3rd highest paid player in the NFL ever. And in the 5th year of this deal, which is really the 4th year of the extension, his base salary is $49.3 million and his cap number is 74. And there are this is a really interesting. I'm going to share this contract. We won't go too much into this because we have real football to talk about.
While you do that, I also think it's hilarious that only Cowboys players are the ones that are supposed to. Oh no, they can't sign now. Why would he sign now? Why would he sign before player X?
Right.
Every other player can sign before player Y or whatever. That's fine, but why would CeeDee Lamb sign before Justin Jefferson or blah blah blah?
And then, when we even had the conversation, we have a show in our YouTube archive that is it time for a CD deal right after the Justin Jefferson deal was signed that's now aged for whatever 6 or 8 weeks or something like that, because that's not really how this stuff works.
Yeah.
Guys sign when the deal that's on the table is the right contract for them. So when you look at this contract, it's really pretty interesting, right? So this is 2024. It's really the last year of his prior contract. So they gave him a big signing bonus, right? That there wasn't in the last deal. Gave him a big signing bonus. $75 million, I think, is the total number. They prorate that first signing bonus over the first 5 years. Then he's got, relatively low base salaries that are guaranteed, and there's some rolling guarantees and stuff like that. But then in 2026, and this is something, if you listen to Andrew Brandt talk about the Packers do contracts, this contract from the Packers, it would be like sacrilegious to Andrew Brandt because of the way it's written. But this is how you should write big contracts now. There's an option bonus in 2026, which is essentially a fancy way of saying a second signing bonus that the guy gets later on in the contract. Then there's a second option bonus in 2027 that then adds another almost $7 million to the proration of the contract. So you wind up with prorated money going all the way out into 2031 for Jordan Love with 3 void years on the back end of the deal. All this stuff I talk about how you should write contracts all the time. And I mean, these are super manageable cap numbers for the next few years. These are on a $250, $300 million salary cap. These are amazingly manageable, especially when you consider all the other young players the Packers have right now. I mean, I guarantee you, Jordan Love will not play the 2028 season on this number. He will either have a contract extension or be out of the league, not with the Packers, before 2028. And then when that contract extension happens, you wind up with these prorations staying out there, and you just tack on another years of signing bonus, and you're in now the $50-ish million a year range per year, which by 2029, when the salary cap is $325 million, is no big deal at all, but you're able to lock in the next 5 years of your quarterback play. And I will say this clarifyingly, with a guy that you hope plays as well as Dak Prescott has played, as consistently as he has played it. And so these are the kinds of things that the Cowboys should have, like, the Cowboys could have written that exact contract for Dak Prescott, and maybe it would have needed to be a 3-year deal. I don't know. There's no telling. Dak has been one who will take all of the leverage that he can get and is willing to call the bluff of the Joneses on whether they are willing to pay him or not, willing to give him what he needs or not. But the quarterback contract developments over the last couple of weeks are important for the Cowboys because it really does set, like, Dak Prescott is not going to get paid less money than Jordan Love. He's just not. You could have argued, like, oh, should Dak get as much as Joe Burrow? Joe Burrow's achieved more than Dak. He's younger than Dak, all that kind of stuff. Should he get paid more than Joe Burrow? But now that Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and Jordan Love are all at the same contract level, there is zero doubt in my mind that Dak Prescott should be and will be north of that number, which means he's going to be pushing 56, 57. And to be honest with you, he's got 8 months, 9 months before he's a free agent. To keep him from playing this year out and going to free agency, it might take $60 million a year to keep him off of that. And to be totally clear and transparent, the Cowboys should absolutely pay that money, because one of the other storylines of camp that we'll get to is Trey Lance. And Trey Lance apparently looks like a quarterback who hasn't played football. Because Trey Lance hasn't played football. He didn't play very much in college. He hasn't played in the pros. And so despite the fact that he's in year 4 of his NFL career, I believe, he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season, and he's costing the Cowboys like $5 million guaranteed this year, is pretty clearly the third best quarterback in camp, and not necessarily something that's giving the Cowboys a lot of hope. And so they've got to give him a ton of reps this camp because it's what he needs. But, like, he's not exactly helping the Cowboys from a leverage standpoint right now.
I think the problem is when you watch these clips of Trey Lance throwing, even if they're good plays, even if they're catches, nothing is, like, on target. You never see a guy just have to, like, bam, frame, catch, turn, and go. It's always like, oh, I got to reach outside my frame. The most worrisome ones that you see consistently on the clips is that he is overthrowing or dirting passes to the flats, it seems like 2 or 3 times a practice. And that is just something that you cannot hide. And I think it kind of points to, I'm not the biggest QB guru in the world. That's definitely more what you're good at. But it seems like, to me, it's not like a mechanics issue or something like that. It's like a mental issue. The fact that he's missing these, like, easy throws so consistently. It just seems like, maybe there's a mental block that he can't get over, because as we've seen, he's putting in the work in the offseason. Everybody talks about how he's consistently working with the team. He has his own QB trainer who's Patrick Mahomes' QB trainer that he's constantly doing work with. He was doing work with the backup receivers throughout the offseason. So it's not like he's not putting in the work, but it just seems like there's some mental, hurdle that he hasn't gotten over yet. Or maybe he's one of those guys that when he gets in the game, he's a little bit better or something. But it's just, from what we hear now, because of course we're both not there, we don't see every throw. We don't see every single thing what's going on. We don't know exactly what is going, but from what we hear, it has not sounded good. Has not sounded good at all. And that's worrisome a little bit, because I think that he's someone that, even though I think we've seen that you can play winning ball with Cooper Rush, if you have someone with Trey Lance's running ability in there, it just opens up the offense so much better. And I always like my backup quarterback to have a running ability, because when things break down, at least you can run and make plays with your legs, kind of the same thing we saw with Josh Dobbs against the Cowboys with the Cardinals last year. You give them really simplistic reads, and if the reads aren't there, take off. And, I think that's a way that you can have productive offense without the starting quarterback in the lineup. And unfortunately, Lance hasn't even seemed like he can get over that, reach that barometer yet.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why, for me, going into a draft, mobility and the ability to escape and run, it doesn't, you don't have to be, Lamar Jackson, but the ability to get out and pick up 6, 7 yards on a scramble relatively easily and consistently is so valuable for these young quarterbacks who haven't played a lot, because there's going to be a 3rd and 8 when Mike McDonald or Mike Zimmer or one of these old crotchety defensive coordinators throws some crazy coverage scheme at you that you've never seen before. You have no idea what it is. You have no idea what to expect from it. Your brain scrambled eggs. And if you just have the ability to say, all right, I don't know what's going on, I'm going to go get this 3rd and 8, and I'm going to go pick up these 8 yards, and I'm going to dive across the first down marker and move the chains. Like, that's so valuable for one of those young players to just be able to keep the offense moving and get yourself out of those, ideally you avoid those 3rd down situations. But if you can run yourself out of 2 or 3 of those a game, so important and so valuable. We saw it early in Dak's career. We see him pull it out every now and then now, but it's really important for those guys. It kind of creates some chaos in the game for you in a way that is advantageous to your offense, because it takes away some of the predictability and all this other kind of stuff. So we will see about the Trey Lance story as we go.
There's nothing in a game that gets me more juiced than Dak Prescott scrambling on a 3rd down and running over a defensive back to get the 1st down, and he gets up and flex, and it just gets me going. I'm like, oh yeah, let's go.
Absolutely. There are players that play for the Washington football team who still send Dak Prescott presents every June for Father's Day. So it's a very important trait for, especially, like I said, for one of those, a backup quarterback or something like that, a young quarterback. But ultimately, you have to be able to make throws. And so maybe Trey Lance is a gamer, and maybe we just haven't had the opportunity to see it because, like I said, he just hasn't played football. And so maybe these 3 preseason games we have known are going to be huge for him. We'll see how those go. Hopefully, he crushes it, and the Cowboys go, hey, we've got an awesome backup quarterback. Somebody wants to trade him a 1st-round pick for. Great.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction now. 3rd preseason game is going to be the Trey Lance special. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes every single snap.
I wouldn't be shocked if he takes probably 80% of the quarterback snaps between all 3 games. Give Cooper Rush 2 series and get him out of there and let Trey Lance play. Starting, maybe Trey plays the whole 1st and the whole last preseason game and just give Cooper Rush a couple series in the 2nd one. But let's see, are there any storylines we haven't talked about? Anything going on in camp that we haven't talked about yet that you think we really ought to touch on going through here? We haven't talked today about Mozzie. That was one of the storylines coming into camp that we were keeping an eye on, and I'm sure you will have close eyes on that down in the trenches when you get there on Friday. But what else have we not covered here as we have just over 5 minutes remaining in our lunch hour today?
I think with the Mozzie thing, it's going to be, wait till the pads come on.
Yeah.
Who cares? Like, everything that he's going, it's all positive right now. Seeing that the shoulder seems to not be giving him issues on the sled, seems to be getting off the ball pretty well. Those are all positives. But the big issue we're going to see when they do inside run drills with pads on, that's when we're going to see where Mozzie Smith is at right now. Not a minute before, not a day before, not a second before. Once they do that exact drill, inside run 9-on-7, Mozzie Smith in there at nose tackle going against Hoffman, Zach Martin, Tyler Smith, 3 or 4 plays in a row, then we'll know where he's at. We'll know exactly where he's at once that happens.
If in the next couple of days, after a few days worth of 9-on-7 run, they wind up trading Brock Hoffman out for Cooper Beebe because Mozzie Smith has been beating him up inside, we'll know things are going pretty well for Mozzie, and that maybe we're getting what we're looking for from the defensive interior, and on the other side, getting the old crotchety offensive line coach to move off of his favorite guy. Justin has a good question. What's happening at running back? Steven kind of made it sound like Royce Freeman's almost a lock to make the roster. He's going to be a guy that's there apparently. What do we what are we thinking from this Cowboys running back room, other than they're still the worst running back room in the NFL and it's not super close, and there's probably 6 guys who will get cut who would come in here and be the best running back Cowboys have.
Anything that you've seen from these running backs to this point is a mirage.
Yes.
First of all, it's already practice, which is extremely difficult to make judgments off running backs anyways, because they're not tackling to the ground.
Yep.
And then there hasn't been pads on, which makes it even doubly weird. Yep. I heard one analyst, this just annoyed the shit out of me yesterday.
Here we go.
There was one analyst that I heard talking, and he was giving praise to Nathaniel Pete and saying like, "Oh, he looks fat. He looked fast in and out of his catch." Which, okay, that's without pads, you could see that. But then he goes into, well, then you saw him in pass protection. Maurice Louis-Fowl came in clean, and Pete just stood there and took him on one in the hole. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, bro, they don't have pads on. They're not hitting. You think EFL is going to sprint into his teammate, put his helmet into the dude's chest who's not even padded? It's like if I was a 187-pound running back, I would step up in without pads too, because there's no
non-contact. Yeah, absolutely.
Ozzie Smith could be coming through and all step right. What is he going to do?
Exactly.
It's just that really frustrated me, but I'm not sure yet. We'll see. I think the preseason games are going to be most important to help kind of delineate how this running back group is going to look like, because you're going to see who's the most productive. You know, who does well single back sets, who does well in the 2-back sets. One thing that the beat reporters have been chronicling is that Hunter Lipke has been staying after practice each day working on the blocking sled. I think that is very important for somebody with his skill set, because he was honestly a very below average lead blocker last year.
Yeah, just make him running back 1 and let's just move on. That's what we got to do.
There you go. There you go. So it's going to be interesting there. You know, he's going to play a big factor into what kind of running backs you keep, because say he doesn't show and you don't keep him, that opens the door for, you know, the Deuce Vaughns, the Malik Davises. Because right now it seems like the top 3 of Zeke, Freeman, and Dowdle are kind of, you know, obviously they're written in pen right now, because like we said, everything is a mirage up until this point. But it seems like the way they're using them, that seems to be the top 3, with maybe Hunter Lipke being the 4th guys that kind of do it all, versatile, you know, juice check type of H-back, fullback type of dude. So that's going to be interesting. So we'll see from there. You know, another thing that has been interesting me, you know, I call it the John V. Johnson Award each camp, where there's always the undrafted receiver, unheralded receiver that's showing out and does really well early on in camp, and that's obviously Tyron Billy Johnson, right?
Most of the time they have 3 names too, which is the interesting thing.
And he's been routing some fools up. And, you know, Nashawn Wright's going to have nightmares about that guy. You know, I've seen him route up Nashawn Wright a couple of times. He beat I think it was Deron Bland in the air for a nice catch. So he's someone who's obviously performing really well. They say Cavante Turpin's doing really well as well. And Jalen Tolbert has seemed to have the best start to camp that he's had thus far in his career, which I think is really important for the Cowboys, who desperately need someone to step up in the wide receiver 3 spot. So those things are kind of interesting. Also, Tyler Guyton got some reps with the ones during the walkthrough mock game. So obviously it looks like fun. While Solari loves himself some Brock Hoffman, it doesn't seem like the same affinity is given to Chuma Edoga. So that's interesting. So I would guess that Tyler Guyton, by the first or second preseason game, you're going to see him starting the lineup with the ones on a consistent basis. So it's going to be intriguing to see what goes on there. But I think that's very, very promising for the early rookie, and everything you're hearing him say. The fact that he took his vacation time leading up into camp, he was doing training with Duke Manyweather every single day to refine his craft. He's giving me a lot of Tyler Smith vibes from since he was drafted. You know, we all talked about the issues that we saw with Tyler Smith going into the draft, but coming out, just hearing him talk, seeing his work ethic on a daily basis, it's hard to not fall in love with a kid like that and really root for that kind of guy. And I think Tyler Guyton's doing the exact same thing. He has done nothing wrong since he's been drafted. He's taken every step necessary, I think, to reach the potential that we all think he can be. And it's just really exciting. You know, we'll see how it plays out his rookie year and what have it. But I am really excited about his future, given that he can stay consistent with this work ethic, with this mindset that he has right now, because it really seems like it's beneficial to his growth.
Yep, absolutely. Be big, get in the way. That's my offensive line philosophy in a nutshell. Be big and get in the way, and the quarterback, when you have a good one like Dak, he'll make the rest. He'll take care of the rest. But guys, we are right about on the hour mark. I don't know about you, John, but this has been really cool. Like, this is the first kind of live thing like this that I've done, and it's been cool to interact with you guys in the chat. Come back, interact with us. Hit the like button on the bottom of the video, hit the subscribe button, all the YouTube things that help the algorithm make the stuff show up so that more people can see this, because the more people that see this, the more opportunities that we'll have to be able to do cool things. John is going to be at camp starting on Friday, so we'll have one more show without the John Camp Insights. And once we get into camp, he'll be there over the weekend, and we'll come back on Tuesday. And I'm just gonna turn the show on and just sit back and let John go for an hour about what he saw at camp over the weekend, because it's gonna be. I've said this several times. It's gonna be a level of insight you're not gonna get anywhere else about what's going on at camp, because we have a guy on our show who actually knows how to watch football practice and take insights away from it. And it's gonna be so valuable to you guys. What you guys are going to get coming out of that, going into getting ready for the first couple of preseason games. You will be more ready for the preseason games by watching our shows next week than you will be from listening to every other Cowboys podcast on all of the other platforms, all combined over the course of the last couple of weeks. So, guys, we're going to get out of here. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, the show is brought to you by Silver Moon Financial. It's up there in the corner. That's my company. I help business owners who suck at accounting get a better perspective on what their business is doing. If you need help with that, reach out to me. I can help you. We can make things better for you. Your business does not have to be a mystery to you. Their finances do not. All right, guys, take care. Have a great rest of the day. And we have Cowboys padded practice today. Let's go.